Hello, Doctor Who fans across the world. This is Paul and Geoff from the Who Corner to Corner podcast. This is, in fact, the Who Corner to Corner podcast. I am, in fact, Paul, and opposite me is, in fact, Geoff.
It is. And I too am and I too am from the Who Corner to Corner podcast.
Yes. Geoff is, in fact, my co-host, and I am, in fact, Geoff's co-host, and together we are the hostage of the Who Corner to Corner podcast, coming at you right now. Yeah. Was that kind of down with the kids enough, do you think?
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Kids
do you think that's going to get us a whole new audience of young people listening to the show?
It could do. It
Wicked. Sick.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is that
is what they say, yeah.
That is
what
what
my son.
It is.
My son says, sus.
Sus. Oh my goodness.
I don't know what it means.
I don't know what that means. I've no idea what that one means.
He doesn't know either.
Oh my good lord. My giddy aunt. Oh my giddy aunt. So what are we talking about tonight then, Geoff? Let's tell our lovely listeners what's on the agenda, my friend.
Well, we are here tonight to talk about the Paul McGann 8th Doctor TV movie. We are buoyed up on the glorious hype of the return of Paul McGann in Power of the Doctor recently.
Yeah. And it was his birthday last week, actually.
Yes, it was his birthday, wasn't it?
Was his
which
birthday.
we tweeted about. So that was really nice. So yeah, we thought we'd go back and watch the Paul McGann TV movie.
Yeah, because why not?
Now I haven't watched this for a while, but I have.
Same.
As I'm sure you do, I have quite fond memories. I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but when it came out. So I'm a little bit jumbled, but I have this memory of buying it on a VHS tape before it was broadcast for some reason, or maybe it was the other way around, which would be the usual way.
It was all a bit weird at the time, I remember. Sort of.
I think I was on holiday in Cornwall, and I went with my friends to Woolworths.
Woolies. I remember Woolies.
And I went to buy the VHS of it, and then when I got back from holiday, I think it was on TV shortly after. So anyway, I'd watched Who with McCoy, and then obviously the show ended, and it sort of stopped for me. Whereas for you, it carried on with Target and New Adventures and things. And then when it came back with McGann, I obviously had a strong enough kind of memory of it to think, I must watch this, and remember really enjoying it, and then there's not going to be any more. Oh, okay, well that's a bit of a shame. And then I didn't know about everything else, because I wasn't sort of really in the fandom at all, or you didn't have the internet back then, etc.
No internet in the 90s. Well, there was, but it was for very exclusive people.
Yes, it was not. Minions and plebs.
That's paid best part of $4,000 for a PC.
So yeah, I distinctly remember going to get it and watching it and enjoying it, and maybe the VHS had a special case to it or something. I can't remember, something, postcards or something anyway. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I've obviously watched it a couple of times since then, and rewatching it this week. I liked it a lot, and I think that. Paul and his Doctor were, immediately likeable within it, and he had quite a strong grasp of playing the character in his way, and it really is a shame that he never got to be developed on screen more. And so thank goodness for Big Finish, because they've done wonders with him, and in a whereas with Colin's 6th Doctor, he was quote unquote, saved on Big Finish, which is not entirely true, because he was still great on TV, but he was allowed to, mellow and develop a bit more on audio. But Paul's Doctor has just been given the life that he never got on TV, which I think is great that we've been able to have that with him. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. What about you? How was it for you?
I love it. To be honest, I've always loved the TV movie, and like you as well. I remember getting the VHS and the novelisation written by Gary Russell, pretty much around the same sort of time. It's one of those things. I was thinking about this the other day when this first came out, and I thought I was at uni. I wasn't actually. I think I just left, so it had been the year that I think actually I'd pretty much done my exams and left. but I remember it because I got together with a bunch of uni friends in the pub on the night after it had been transmitted on BBC One in the UK, which is a bank holiday, if I recall. And we all got together in the pub on a Tuesday, and we were all talking about it. And I remember thinking, this is the first time since I'd been at school years and years and years before. And actually, even then, because when I was at school before that, it was Sylvester McCoy. Nobody but me talked about Sylvester McCoy. Yeah, so really, going back to maybe Peter Davison or even Tom Baker when I was, in primary school. But this was the first time that I'd been with a bunch of mates that everyone, the whole conversation was about Doctor Who. Did you see it? What do you think of it? Paul McGann, it was American, this, that, and the other. All these things, about, as we're sitting around the table having a few beers. It felt really good. It felt like somehow the spark of Doctor Who had been reignited. And I think we all knew the TV, the scripts, the movie, the end result wasn't perfect. But there's something about it which is so joyous, which is so full of the essence of Doctor Who, that it was enough to kind of get the British public, watching it again. I mean, it got what? 9 million viewers over here,
did really well,
which is great. And in the mid '90s, when TV audiences were downwards, So, and okay, it didn't do great over in the States because for some reason they put it up against the final episode of Roseanne, which was like an absolute cult across both sides of the Atlantic. I think even I watched some of that.
Yeah, I used to
lost
watch
track
Roseanne,
by then, to be honest. But yeah, it was. It's really something. I think it's one of those Doctor Who stories that, for better or worse, is an absolute landmark. Yeah, and it's great. I love it.
Well, it was a big deal, I remember it being on the papers, on talking about it with my friends and stuff. And like you said, the flame was, obviously I wasn't quite aware of it all the same way you were back then, but it was back. And
you were still in nappies back then, weren't you?
I was, yeah. At college, I don't like to talk about it, but
I don't like to talk about those days. It was a long time ago.
And then I think I must have, maybe I read it in the paper or something that, it wasn't coming back, and I thought, oh, that's a shame. It didn't sort of quite make sense because it had done well over here, but obviously with the, the US involvement on it, that's what kind of finished it. And so, in an alternate, across the multiverse somewhere, that it was a hit, and there was a whole different life for Doctor Who, springing out of that, which we'll never have, but we'll we got it. So I made a few notes watching it.
Have you, Geoff?
I have, and when it starts there, you've got that sort of recap about the Skaro and the Master and stuff like that, and then it sort of fairly quickly gets into the title music, and I wrote, the theme feels full of hope and excitement, and
I love the theme.
It's really good, and it's sort of hard to explain, but it felt like, this is big, this is exciting, and this is like, when music in a film or something just kind of erupts, and it's really kind of thrilling and exciting, and it did that, and felt quite kind of defiant. This is a mission statement sort of thing, and the theme reflects the Eighth Doctor quite well, I think, as well. So it had a cracking start to it, I thought.
I agree. It starts. I mean, the theme music starts with the middle eight, doesn't it? And I think that's one of the reasons why it sounds quite uplifting and joyous, because that is the part of the theme music which does that. It lifts it from the usual ooh kind of thing, which and it's never been done. It was never done before. It's never been done since. In fact, I'm sure I remember reading an interview with Murray Gold when the series came back to the BBC in 2005 that he wasn't originally going to bring back the middle eight. He didn't like it. It was like porridge or something. I thought he said. And then I think actually the next series he did bring it back, and he did a brilliant job of it. But I love the middle eight of the Doctor Who thing. It's great. So it does and the fact this starts with it, and it has that, it's not as fast paced as it had been previously or would be in 2005. There's a sort of steady march to it, isn't it? It's like a brass band with a bit of orchestra playing behind, and again, it's the first time we'd heard really the Doctor Who theme being played by an orchestra. So this is something that kind of prefigures what's going to happen in almost, in another 7 years' time or so.
Yeah.
After this, it is a real stepping stone between the old classic series and the reborn, the modern series. And I do wonder a lot, if we hadn't had the TV movie, would we even have got the 2005 revival series? I don't think we had, because it's so clear that the BBC in the late 80s and pretty much right through the 90s had no respect, no love at all for Doctor Who. They wanted it gone. If you read all the stuff, all the stuff Philip Segal was saying, the producer of this, and all the stuff around at the time, and it just, it had maybe a few allies, like possibly Alan Yentop, who was at one point the controller of BBC Two and got some repeats back on the TV, and there were various people who were sort of connected but not in a position strong enough, like Graham Harper, for example, and John Nathan Turner, who was still staunch ally of it, but wasn't really able to do anything. He couldn't make any decisions. It was out of his province. It was totally the higher ups at the BBC. So there was nobody really who liked it. Nobody wanted it. We got this show eventually, after all the wrangling with everything else. The story of how this movie came to be is one of the most exciting periods in Doctor Who's troubled life. It's a real adventure in itself. I really feel for Philip Segal when he eventually was able to watch it and sit there and watch it and just look at it for all its flaws, but having spent 7 years of his life and then some trying to get this on. But I'm kind of digressing. The point I'm getting at is, if we hadn't had this, the BBC probably wouldn't have realised there was still an audience for it. 9 million people tuned in to watch this after a period of 7 years. So that's more than just fans. That's people like my wife. She did watch it. She was... She wasn't my wife at the time. She wasn't quite yet then. But, she watched it with me. And people went out and bought the DVDs like you did and I did. And I remember as well, it was all over the place. It was in every magazine, it seemed.
Yes,
it was in SFX, it was in Starburst, and a whole bunch of other titles which aren't around anymore. And I wanted to do my usual thing. You know me, Geoff. I like to not have spoilers, but... there was no way I couldn't lap this stuff up as soon as it was coming out. Every set photograph, the images of the TARDIS, the Doctor in his costume, Grace Holloway, Lee Jitso, Eric Roberts, the Master. Oh my God, it was just the most exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan at that point.
Like I said, I remember it, and it was exciting. But for a much more hardcore, long-term fan like yourself, it must have been amazing. I think you're right. If this hadn't happened, we probably wouldn't have had, the new Who.
And there are so many stylistic similarities between that and what we came to get in 2005 and onwards as well. There is a sort of faster pace to it. It's obviously a little bit more lavish. There's some. There's some money being spent on it, probably more on this than there ever was actually in any of the 2005 episodes.
You can see it in the TARDIS set alone.
Yeah,
it's massive.
It's gorgeous.
In San Francisco and stuff as well. So we'll talk about the TARDIS and stuff in a minute.
Yes.
Tell me, what your thoughts were when Sylv turns up at the beginning.
I mean, as a hardcore Doctor Who fan, I love it because it's continuity. It's a handhold to the old series, and Sylvester never got in Survival. Brilliant story though it is, the kind of finish that his Doctor deserved.
Yes,
I'm disappointed Ace wasn't in it, but I can get through that. But as a Doctor Who fan, I love the fact Sylvester McCoy is in it. As a sort of creative kind of person, and someone able to, and I put my sort of story writing hat on and think, is this the right thing for a new audience after 7 years of absence? And it's a show that probably nobody really remembers Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, and apart from the hardcore fans, and you're introducing it to an American audience, it's totally the wrong start to the show. Absolutely wrong. Yeah. But I still love the fact he's there.
Now, that it exists and is unencumbered by anything of the time. It's brilliant, and it stood the test of time for it. And helps kind of give the TV movie more so it makes it more special because of it. So yeah, it was great to see Sylv. I felt that the way he was killed, and had to regenerate was, bit. I didn't like it. I felt that the actual episode is the movie is quite violent.
It is, especially in its first half. Yeah,
yeah. I wrote
it's quite dark.
The gang war stuff is quite violent, and it's a sort of new world for the show. And I felt that Seven's end was quite violent, and he was innocent in it. He just steps out the TARDIS and gets shot down. And so, it was a bit kind of.
But that's the 90s though, mate. That's the 90s. Well, people used to get shot up all the time, innit?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true particularly. I'm sure it isn't. But I don't know, there did seem to be a lot of shows. I think they've probably always been there, to be honest, but where it's just a lot of guns and there's no real respect for the damage that guns can do in those things. It's just an action point. Possibly, if that makes any sense. Yeah. I don't know. It does seem a little bit gratuitous and sort of unnecessary, but in some ways it's not actually the gunshots that kill the Seventh Doctor. It's the surgery that he undergoes afterwards at the hands of Grace Holloway. It's if you're going to be really pedantic about it,
Yes, yeah, but it still.
But then he wouldn't be there unless he got shot.
No, and so It was what it was, but normally the doctor goes out kind of heroically. So this was like he might as well have slipped on a banana. So I suppose.
There is that. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually,
it was fine. I like the way in the. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a weird thing. There's a weird kind of pause though when the TARDIS materialises. So Chang Li is kind of on his own, isn't it? His mates have all been shot up. And the three dudes are standing there with their machine guns pointing at him. They pause. Chang Li's got nowhere to run, and then the wind fires up. Now Chang Li could run at this point, noticing that his attackers are being distracted, but he doesn't. He stays there looking around himself in sort of confused, curious wonderment. And also so do the three guys with the guns. They stick around as well. There's quite a long pause where you think, okay, one of them should make a run for it or something or do something. But they literally wait until the TARDIS is fully materialised, until the door opens, and then the Doctor steps out, and then they gun him down, and then they run. It's a little bit strange.
Yeah, there'd have been no movie if they'd run.
Yes.
Well, actually, it would have been very different, yeah.
I have to say, it's probably the only part of this movie that actually I don't like that much. Like you, I think I can live with the rest of this pretty much all, regardless of its weird inconsistencies and bizarre plot points and contrivances and everything else. But this one, it's just, but like with a lot of Doctor Who, it's of its time, and I just get the impression there was a lot of that sort of thing going around in TV shows in the 90s.
Yeah, TV then was a little bit more sort of edgy and stuff, wasn't it? And it's
that's
fine.
It. Yeah, deliberately edgy. Yeah. There was a lot of what was it, kind of pre-millennial angst going around when everybody thought the clocks were gonna stop and the whole world would grind to an apocalyptic halt, because nobody had figured out how to put an extra digit or an extra zero to accommodate the year 2000. So that was all a bit strange. But there was a lot of that in culture. And, a lot of the music at the time, you think, you got things like U2's Acton Baby, that whole cyberpunk kind of move. There was a real feeling that we were almost on the edge of a dystopia, which is weird because after the Berlin Wall came down, it was actually quite a happy place most of the 90s. There was a feeling that something horrific was just around the corner. Yeah. So we're kind of going into political history now, but
yes, yeah, and
there was.
But, well, yeah,
as it happens.
What did you think?
We can cut that.
No, it's good. It reminds me of a story from Bono's book. Actually, they went to Germany to record.
They did, in Berlin.
And, yeah, that's right. And they went out to go party that night. And when they first landed, and they thought everyone's really miserable. What Germany's supposed to be happening, and music, culture, and all this. And then they realised they were on the wrong side of the wall, and they joined the group that didn't want it to have come down. So let's go back to some fiction. What did you think of Eric's master?
I love Eric's master.
Yeah.
I love it from start to finish. I love it when he's Bruce the ambulance guy, and he's such a lovely guy. He is. He only has a few lines as Bruce, but in those few lines, and this is true of a lot of the characters in this, there is masses of personality.
Yes.
In the bit players even, and at that point, Bruce is only really a bit player. He gets the doctor's corpse into the back of an ambulance and takes it to the hospital and has a nice little chat with Chang Li, and then he becomes the master after that.
Yeah,
when the snake kind of goes down his throat.
Yeah, which is very, very 90s CGI.
It is. But like so much Doctor Who of its time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that. I love even the planet Skaro, which opens, right? Yeah. Now, I remember looking at that thing and, oh, wow, that's pretty good. Suddenly it looked on the level of like Star Trek The Next Generation, right? Yeah. Suddenly Doctor Who was at this level now. And we'd only had sort of glimpses of that before. But anyway, I thought, wow, this is brilliant. But now I look at it and I think, I actually thought for a minute I was going to be watching Lex. I don't know if you ever saw that, but that was a mad 90s sci-fi thing that I adored. It was a cult student thing, and just me and my mates just used to watch it at ridiculous hours of the morning, think, what the fuck is this? It's just one of those kind of head banging psychedelic weird things, but it was full of that 90s type CGI where there's not quite as much detail as you really need on a thing.
That's it. And at the time you don't know any difference, so
that was great. I remember thinking it's brilliant.
It's good. I made a note that that Bruce, when he becomes the master, he turns a bit T-1000.
He does a bit. Oh yes, There's no disguising that. That's totally intentional.
Even talks differently like this.
Well, he is a corpse at that point. The master has actually killed Bruce's body. He's decaying, and this presence is kind of inside, but it's not. I get the impression it's not fully settled. It's controlling him like a puppet on a string, really. And there's that brilliant moment where he's with the comedy nurse, and he pulls off a fingernail and flicks it.
Oh yeah,
which is great. It's disgusting. But also, just before that moment, actually, when he comes into shot through the camera from right to left, he kind of lurches in a zombie-like way, as if he is actually a puppet on a string. We don't see him do that again, but the fact that he does it means he's thinking about it. I mean, Eric Roberts' performance in every scene as the master is completely different. There's hardly any real continuity, which I can get along with, because the master is unhinged. So that works for me. I don't have any issue with it, and I love it. And the fact we go from that to right at the end, where he always dresses for the occasion, I love. It's become a meme, and it's brilliant. And I love all of it. I love the zombie. I love the camp. I like the humour. He's got a fair bit of humour as well in there, and he's a bit flirty with Chang Li. It's a bit flirty with Grace. So there's that sort of part to it as well. He's brilliant. I really do like Eric Roberts' master.
Yeah, he's having a
What
great
about you?
time,
What do you think? You think he's having a great time? Yeah,
he's really enjoying it, and like you say, he kind of does develop a bit as he goes on, and like there's not sort of a coherent consistency to it, but I suppose he's been taken over and blah blah blah. But yeah, he's on the right side of kind of camp OTT for it. I think he doesn't go too wild with it, but he's really good and sort of kind of maniacally evil, but not really over the top. It's restrained and believable, really.
There's a strong element of performance. The master performing. It's almost like the master is being a pantomime villain and actually sort of enjoying it in his weird, twisted way. But to be honest, you look at John Sims' master, you look at Michelle Gomez's Missy and Sacha Dhawan's master. They all pull on that as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? There is a delight in doing what the master does. I think maybe Sacha Dhawan's takes it into a much, much darker place. But again, it kind of springs from here, because I think actually Eric Roberts' master is slightly different. It's actually very different from Anthony Ainley's. Anthony Ainley's is I don't know, seems seems a little bit more two-dimensional than either Roger Delgado's before him or these ones afterwards. And I think I'll probably upset a lot of people saying that, but it's just just what I think. And there's not a lot of nuance, I don't think, to Anthony Ainley's Master, and I love him for that because I love what he does. But there's a huge amount of nuance to Eric Roberts. But I don't think it's all intentional. I think it just depends what mood he was on the day they were recording it. Yeah. So they recorded it on a Tuesday morning instead of a Monday morning. It could have been completely different. As a result of that, it is very different through the film. So I don't think it's much a character progression. So it's not nuanced in that way, but it is very changeable.
And it kind of works, though, doesn't it?
It totally works. Yeah, whether by accident or design, I think it works.
It was good that he came back and did some Big Finish.
I know. I'm going to have to listen to those.
I've heard it's good. If anyone listening, I haven't listened to them, but if anyone's listening has listened to them,
let us know
what you thought. So, what did you think of Grace in this?
Yeah, I love Grace. She's a bit crazy as well in some respects.
Yeah, she's quite different. I mean, the first time you see her, she's at the opera and having a little tear, and she's a doctor, so you immediately realise she's quite cultured and smart and intelligent and everything. And I quite like the parallel that she's a doctor, as well, a real one. But again, I liked her, and I think that had the show carried on, I think they could have had a really good pairing between them, and it would have been a bit different, because obviously Ace was sort of pseudo teenager type of thing, and Grace is older, so that would have been quite nice to have that slightly different thing, because 8 is he's sort of a more mature doctor in some ways, isn't he?
Do you think?
Kind of. Yeah, but also like the bit where he runs on the spot and he gets really excited. He's very joyful and all of that quite to the forefront. And I think that that they Grace is sort of a bit more. There's more of a serious element to her, as well as a sort of goofy side, perhaps. Or not goofy as such, but. A romantic side.
Yeah,
maybe,
I think that's. I think romantic with a capital R.
Yeah,
like of that.
Believing in love and
which makes her ideal, I think, for the Eighth Doctor, because he's designed around that kind of. Well, he's been described as Byron-esque, which is and Byron is the epitome of the romantic capital R kind of movement. In art and whatever. So she's a brilliant counterpoint. Her character is a brilliant counterpoint for the Eighth Doctor, and it's a shame. I was surprised actually at the end of this when she didn't jump in the TARDIS. And
I'd forgotten.
Actually, the three of them. It'd be great. I'd have loved to see the three of them go off and do adventures, but they don't. But I like the reason why Grace doesn't, because she says she knows who she is now. It's kind of, and I'd never thought about this until I sort of watched it last night, that, at the start of this, she's sort of going through the motions with her relationship. She's got this boyfriend guy and, he's taking us to the opera, or she's brought in, whatever it is, they're both at the opera. She loves the opera. Whether he does or not, I don't know. There's no emotion on his face, but there is on Grace's face. She really intensely feels it. She's got that sort of creative soul. But I just wonder, is she doing what she really wants to do? And then you get this thing at the end. She's been fired from her job, so she doesn't know what the future holds, but she feels complete. She knows who she is. And I love that, because at the same time, the Doctor knows who he is as well. There's a lot of... I love the storytelling in this as well. There's a lot of parallels. The Doctor regenerating the same time as the Master assumes his new body, right? Grace's understanding of who she is at the point when the Doctor understands who he is as well. There's lots of nice little cuts as well in the actual direction. And that whole battle at the end, you get this brilliant bit where half the Master's face is on the right-hand side of the screen, and then half the Doctor's face, the other half of the face, is on the other half of the screen, and it cuts between the two of them, almost like you're seeing two sides of the same face.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's brilliant.
Which,
Stuff like that elevates it, you know.
Yeah, I mean they are in many ways, aren't they? Two sides of the same
Yeah,
coin,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know,
and you've got a direct
there's-
visual representation of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'd forgotten that Grace didn't leave with him at the end, so it took me a bit by surprise actually. Quite a bit of a weird way to end it, I guess. But
Well, it's not ending on a way that's going to go to a series, is it? You know, there's
but they
no
wouldn't
big
have known that
cliffhanger
at the time. No,
No, exactly. And you know, and in some ways, I think in retrospect, that kind of helps the TV movie.
Yeah,
because it makes it an island of its own.
Oh, yeah.
It's, you know, so whatever happens next, whether it's and BBC Books were kind of quick to pick it up with The Eight Doctors by Terrance Dicks. It's a complete new start. So we've got the established character of the Eighth Doctor. We kind of know who he is. There's so much more that can be told, and off he goes, having adventures with Sam. I want to say Sam Jones, but Sam Jones was Flash Gordon. I can't remember her other name. Sam anyway. I'll probably find it somewhere.
I looked up on Big Finish, and they've never had Daphne Ashbrook do an audio with Paul McGann. She did some.
Wasn't she? She did do some, didn't she?
Yeah, with the lad in the film. I can't remember his name.
Lee Jitso.
Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, he did some. I think because there's possibly a rights issue with the character. I think
really?
Grace Holloway and Chang Lee belong to Universal. They're their characters, so we're probably never going to see them again.
No.
In the world of Doctor Who, the lawyers will have a field day unless Disney can just steamroller over all of that crap.
Well,
don't they own
maybe.
Universal anyway these days? Probably one of the few studios that they don't.
No, they own Fox. That's a bit of a shame. But obviously, McGann did a lot with Sheridan Smith and
Lucy Miller.
Great stuff there. So what
Lucy
did you think?
Bleeding Miller.
That's
Sorry,
it,
go
Lucy
on.
Bleeding
Yeah.
Miller. What did you think of? We briefly mentioned earlier, but the TARDIS design, and there's quite a bit more of the TARDIS on show in this, isn't there?
On the inside, definitely. On the outside, looking at it now, it looks really small.
Yeah.
It looks really small, and the police box font at the top looks too big, so proportions don't look quite right. But it's the old style police box from the 80s and 70s, isn't it? With a bit of a new paint job and stuff. So I love that they kept to that. And the inside is okay. So again, right, I've got my Doctor Who fan creative side that absolutely loves it. Love the lighting, love the mix between wood panels, brass levers and railings, fluorescent tubes that reach up to a really, really high ceiling that can disappear to show the outside image of the universe. We've got those big steel arches that seem to have been recreated in Jodie's TARDIS with the crystal arches. So I love all that. And again, a lot of those design choices have kind of bled through into the new series. Again, that central column that goes all the way up through the centre of the TARDIS, it seems to imply. So I love all that. On the other hand, it's totally bonkers, right? Because, I mean, the seal of Rassilon everywhere. Why would that happen? The face of Rassilon in the Eye of Harmony in a cloister room that has bats in it, that has torches, flaming torches on the walls. That has millions of candles. I mean, was the Seventh Doctor suddenly into candles and clocks? Somehow develops a candle clock fetish in an unseen adventure or something. Oh, I've got to collect all the clocks in the world and the universe, or time will disrupt and fold in upon itself. I did think
that
mental.
Was like there was that little shot of all the clocks, and it was like, he likes time.
Yeah, he likes time. So I think actually, I've just got the novel of the TV movie in front of me. I think Gary Russell, who wrote this, right, he sort of seems to justify it, and I like some of the ways that he does. Firstly, he points out that some of the where are we? So this is him describing the interior of the Eighth Doctor, or the Seventh Doctor's TARDIS as it is at this point, and he goes, there's a tiny secluded garden area with an ornamental church organ borrowed from St Christopher's in Cheldon, Boniface, his favourite English village. Now that, if memory serves, was featured in the Paul Cornell New Adventures novel, Revelation. And it's appeared throughout a few New Adventures, I think. And then we've also got, so just skipping forward a bit, he goes, above the wooden main exit doors with their marble embellishments was a massive circular indentation inscribed with the most recognisable Gallifreyan symbol, the Great Seal of Rassilon. Smaller versions of this device dotted the rest of this room and others. The Doctor had long resisted displaying them. He was not exactly proud of his heritage, but was now reaching an age nearly 1,000 years old where it seemed to be appropriate to at least acknowledge it. He must be maturing, the Doctor decided, like a good wine. So I love that, because obviously Gary Russell, been involved with the New Adventures and Doctor Who magazine over those wilderness years, writing the crazy design but beautiful design of that TARDIS into the continuity of Doctor Who, as any fan in their right minds would absolutely do. I love that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
What do you reckon?
I love the look of the TARDIS. It's so sort of it stands on its own against all the others. You know, the 9 and 10's TARDIS is so different from that orange monstrosity that 11 had to start with.
You didn't like that one, did you?
Didn't really like that one.
I remember you saying before.
But then his second version, is sort of all really kind of sci-fi looking, and the enhancements with Capaldi's, with books and stuff is really fitting, and I love Jodie's, and it sort of harkens back a bit to the organic style with 9 and 10s, the kind of coral type structures, and I like the big crystal structures with Jodie's one, and it's a bit like McGann's one here with that big kind of. Looks a bit like the U2 claw from that tour the 360 tour.
Yeah, it does.
A bit like that, but preceding it. I think it looks really good. And thinking about McGann's Doctor, like I said earlier, he's had a really great life on audio. I've listened to quite a bit of the Dark Eyes series. I've done the first 2 sets of that, and I've listened to some of the ones where he travelled with Mary Shelley, which are more sort of, I
haven't got round to listen to those yet. I'm really looking forward to them.
There's one about, I think there's about 4, there's not many, but one of them is about a sort of witch living in a well, and the other one is called Silver Turk, which is about a Cyberman.
Yes.
And it's quite spooky actually, as listeners might know. I like a spooky Who, and I listened to Stranded as well, the first set of that. But like we've talked about before, I think so many of his releases now are 4 episodes of box set 1, and it's going to be a 4 box set series, which is like what's
£100 or so,
16 hours of stuff, which is awesome, but. I can't keep up with it. I can't afford it, and I can't listen to it all. So, I've heard enough to like it a lot.
It is a shame in a way.
But if you're a big 8th Doctor fan, you are being regularly spoilt, which is great.
This is with Big Finish actually, just on that subject, because I remember when they got McGann on to do them, because I think it took a little bit longer to come in than the other Doctors. I think it was still 2000, 2001, I remember just being really, really excited. I thought, brilliant, because I had really enjoyed him, and I'd enjoyed and was enjoying the 8th Doctor books, the BBC books. A lot of those were really, really good. But they're not Paul McGann. The fact that now we get Paul McGann being the Doctor again in brand new adventures on audio. It's brilliant. And I kind of, when I started, because I kept with the monthly releases, but when I fell away from that, I still maintained the 8th Doctor adventures as far as I could. And I've got all the Lucy Miller stories, and I loved all those. So, I haven't got the Stranded ones yet. I've got Dark Eyes, but I haven't really listened to it yet. But because for me that was like the future. That was actually the continuation of Doctor Who, as far as I was concerned. So great to have the past Doctors do new adventures, but actually the 8th Doctor, the current Doctor, doing new adventures. That is Doctor Who continuing until the new series came on.
So, I was going to say it was really great when he returned briefly in Night of the Doctor.
Oh, yeah. That was
if anyone remembers,
really good.
Did it drop online or something? That
It
episode?
did. Yeah, it was on it was on YouTube and it was on iPlayer.
Yeah, and
my bloody mate flipping and he spoiled it for me. Not even
really?
a Doctor Who fan. Oh, Paul McGann, Doctor. You watched it?
Yeah.
You fucker.
They kept it secret, which was quite an achievement.
Unusual for the Moffat years.
Yeah, very. And I need a Doctor. I'm the Doctor, but probably not the one you were expecting. And I was, whoa, it was such a cool moment.
Yeah.
Really great stuff. So we've got a few tweets from people to talk about the episode. So James from the Pink Phone Box says that unique feeling of excitement that only comes with the anticipation of new Doctor Who was palpable, like it was everywhere and everyone was talking about the show again.
There you go, yes.
I was sad it didn't lead to a series because there was so much to love, Paul McGann especially.
What do you think about that? Were you sad that it didn't go to a series at the time? Were you old enough to make those sort of decisions, mate?
Well, I had to ask my
to have
parents,
those thoughts.
What am I allowed to think here? But yeah, like I said, I really liked it when I watched it and went and bought it and stuff. And there was a tie-in magazine, or maybe I bought the book, or I don't know, a long time ago. But when I read that it wasn't coming back, I thought, oh, that's a bit shit, So yeah, I was probably not disappointed to the level that like yourself.
I was crushed.
Yeah, I can imagine, and
crushed. I was,
but yeah,
but
I was thinking I should have had more of that. Yeah. So yeah, I was disappointed. Yeah. Gail writes, who's at Mealy Garage, says it was my first proper Doctor Who that I sat down and watched. I thought it was pretty good as someone who wasn't a fan at the time. McGann looked mighty fine. All right, Gail, steady on. Apart from that wig, of course. Is he wearing a wig in it? And he still does to this day.
Totally wearing a wig.
James Jessup, who's at Jessup217, says he's the best part of it. Santa Yunachi, that's not the usual name for goddess.
I think there's a festive aspect to that one.
YK13, yeah. Though I admit that the TV movie has flaws, it was pretty good overall and some very new ideas that later used in the new series. So, which is kind of what you said. Cheryl, who's Gallifrey Angel, says, "Oh, it's brilliant. Always had happy memories of it as a 16-year-old." And then Marty Pujals, who is at Build a TARDIS. That's a great name. It's fun, just a nice little film to watch in a weekend afternoon. So we might have had some more comments, but I can't find them all right now.
I think there's a few more tweets there, but what do you think? Because there's one aspect of this which we haven't talked about, which is the regeneration.
Oh yeah,
it's quite an important part of it, to be honest. Mate.
Yes,
get through this without talking about that.
I did make notes on that, actually. Yeah, I wrote that Seven's death takes ages, and seems to really go on for a while. And then I liked the sort of homage to Frankenstein, which was a little bit kind of heavy-handed by the fact that the porter was watching it. Maybe that was a bit much for it.
But again, you're selling the idea to a new audience who wouldn't know.
True. Yeah, that's true. So maybe that's why they had Sylv in it to establish that for a new audience. I don't know, but yeah, I liked it, and that the shot where Paul sits up and he has that like film noir slice of light across his eyes.
Across his eyes.
That's a classic shot. It's really good.
Yeah. That was on the cover of SFX magazine, I think, or at least one of the magazines back in the day, which I snapped up and saw. But the actual effect itself always got me, because it's always one of those anticipatory moments. Probably not so much these days in the same way, because the effect actually seems pretty similar. It's kind of gone to that sort of golden fountain, that outpouring of energy, isn't it?
Yes.
And okay, there's been little tweaks at it, but essentially it's always been that
since
2005. So, but obviously before that, every regeneration was different, and this one, because I was expecting something actually quite spectacular, perhaps along the lines of the golden outpouring of energy, but it's probably one of the most subtle regenerations.
Actually, I think I wrote that because you get this sort of weird. It's not a morph, but it's a really, like, you know when you get editing programs and you're like, ooh, there's a star.
Let's see what that one
effect.
does.
Ooh, this one's a box effect, and other assorted shit that you never use if you're actually a credible editor. And you can get like warp effects where there's like a pinpoint in it, and it sort of pulls the image back in. So they've kind of used that
and
on
stitches
the faces there.
Those together.
Yeah, but yeah, like you said, it's very subtle. It's sort of before you realise it. Oh, he's turned into Paul McGann.
Yeah. A few little lightning effects, a few little lightning sparks going on around it.
You see the skeleton. You see a skeleton as well, which I quite liked. But for some reason, it made me think of what's his name, Vigo in Ghostbusters 2. You remember the big his face goes in.
That's just awful. How can you say that? I'll tell you what I like about it. Firstly, it reminds me very much of Patrick Troughton at the end of the War Games, when he's been given loads of faces to choose from, and he doesn't like any of them, and the Time Lords decide they're going to choose one for him anyway, and he sort of recedes into this black background, splits up Bohemian Rhapsody style, and goes, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? And his voice goes weird, and his face starts gurning all over the place and blurring in and out. And there's Sylvester McCoy doing a bit of gurning, twisting his face around, and then before you know it, he's Paul McGann, and he doesn't look any different, right? Until he sits up. Now, you look at them side by side, Paul McGann and Sylvester McCoy are totally different, right? But on the table, on the gurney, with their heads swept back and their profile and that lighting, it's so... And I love it, because... Actually, I mean, I did see it. There's just a flicker when you can just see them switch. But watching this on an old 625 line TV back in the day, or a VHS, didn't see that at all. It was literally like there was no change that you noticed until exactly you think, oh my God, that's like magic. He's suddenly Paul McGann. How did that happen?
Even now, it's really subtle.
But it's still pretty good.
And like you said, when it happened, there was a moment where I thought, has he changed? What's going on? It was very.
You can see it now on a high def telly when everything is kind of just exposed. There's no getting away from stuff with high def TVs now. But but yeah, I love it. I think it's great. And you're right. The Frankenstein stuff is a bit heavy, but you got that big guy. In the what are they called? The mortuary.
The morgue.
The morgue. That's the word. In the morgue, and he's brilliant. And again, another one of those bit characters that just has so much personality. The personality oozes through this TV movie from start to finish.
You're right. There was a couple of bits in Grace's office that. Was it paintbrushes and stuff? And I thought, it's indicating she's an artist as well or something. It was just enough that that there's more going on than we're seeing on screen, and that matches her love for Madame Butterfly, for opera, Puccini, and and I love also the way the opera music comes back to the Doctor. It's his anchor to his previous self, and sort of sparks or triggers his memory of what actually happened, and he sees it in Grace's flat, or sees the CD, makes that connection. It's not a flat, is it? It's an actual house. So and again, there's not a lot of time to tell this story. It tells a lot of story, probably too much in some ways. It's trying to squeeze a huge amount of stuff in, all the continuity stuff, plus the actual plot itself. We've got an atomic clock in there, we've got a car chase, a bike chase even, we've got the Doctor threatening to shoot himself if the policeman doesn't do what he says, and there's that nice joke, he's British, just go with it, or whatever, and it's so joyous. And I'll tell you what, just before we sort of go back to us, because I know I interrupted the tweets and that, but I have to say, talking about the personality and stuff, I love, right, the moment where so all of Earth, right, and the universe of space and time presumably is getting sucked into this high of harmony. Let's not even go there, but that's what's happening. The countdown is to New Year's Eve, but it's a countdown to the destruction. There's no reason actually why
the world will end at midnight tonight on New Year's Eve, but it does, and it's great. I love that, right? Because it doesn't make any sense at all, and it's purely contrived and purely coincidental. But again, it's so much fun. Just go with it, and but there's a moment, right, when the guy, what's his name, is it Dr. Rag or something, the chief scientist, right? He's about to announce that this clock will be switched on at midnight, and the Doctor's already stolen the component, the beryllium chip or whatever it is that the whole thing depends upon. So so he's making his big grand speech, and he gets a little whisper in the ear that it's not working. And he's like, what do you mean it's not working? It's not going to happen. And he looks up at two guys on the gantry, two scientists, right, who had been working on the clock. And they just shrug like, well, I don't know. Don't know what's been going on. And it's like, and this is the culmination of this guy's life work, right, is the launch of this atomic clock. But by this point, I don't give a fuck. Nobody does. And it's brilliant because it's in the program that comes from, in the show itself. It's not that the audience doesn't give a toss. It's that the characters are like, do you know what? It's not important. It's really, it doesn't matter. And I just love that. And that, I get such a kick of joy sort of listening, sort of watching those bits from this. It's just, it's fantastic. For all its flaws, for all its problems, I honestly don't care. I love story, and I love the logic in story, and I love characters, and when all those things come together, but just occasionally it all breaks. And the story doesn't make any sense, and the plot doesn't really work if you look at it. Not even too closely, just if you look at it, it doesn't work. The plot in this doesn't really work, but it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't
one
matter
little jot.
It's so much fun, and that Paul's Doctor is so good, and really that sort of stuff is all that matters. Have you enjoyed it? Yes.
In this one, it really is, and even things like the kiss, which is contentious, right? And we've seen the Doctor kiss a lot since then, but this was the first time he'd really done it. So whoa, and all the fairy lights in the background, and the way the camera pulls the aperture in, so we get that nice bokeh background, and you know what I mean. It's all blurred and it's all lovely. It's just absolutely, it's just joyous.
It is really nicely shot.
And you're right, when Paul McGann sort of stamps his feet on the ground, he's halfway through quite a serious conversation, and suddenly it's like it fits the shoes, and then he runs around and you just laugh with him, and Grace laughs with him, and it's all sort of reflected back, and then you cut to the Master who's just getting quite nasty and just tricking Chang Li that the Doctor's taken his body and all that sort of stuff. The other part I don't really like is the end, and this did used to bother me back in the day when the Doctor sort of turns time back and saves everybody, brings Grace and Chang Li back from life. But again, it's like, do you know what? They have to survive this. It starts off dark and it goes into a bit of a dark place with the scary eyes and everything right at the end, and Grace whacking him with a mallet. That's a little bit shocking, but but we get this kind of golden glow coming up from the Eye of Harmony, which at the time I thought, oh God, here we go. This is where the American schmaltz kind of creeps into the thing. It's got to hit the studio requirements and the audience needs and all that sort of stuff. And I think, oh God, it could do without that, which it probably could. But I think actually that's regeneration energy now. That's what I'm thinking in my head. That's the golden glow we see in the regeneration nowadays. And there's also that little whisper of breath that comes out of the Doctor's mouth after he's regenerated. Again, we see a lot of those things. Now, these little echoes, which you just wonder, were they picked up on in the TV movie or from the TV movie, and they kind of bled through. The TV movies brought a sort of, a sort of maturity to the classic series of Doctor Who. It sort of moved it, it pushed it into that American framework. And whilst we say, well, Doctor Who's not American, it's a very British thing. It can never exist as an American TV show. And clearly, because of this, it can't. But putting it into that framework, I think, was totally necessary for what the program became. It showed people what it could be if it was brought back, and maybe with some of those excesses and idiosyncrasies that made it more American than British, perhaps trimmed a bit. But with American TV shows, you get, especially of those times, you get fast pace. You get very quick characters that you instantly just get. You get much wider scope and scale on certain things. You get bigger budgets, lots of brighter lights, and Doctor Who, I think, because everybody's a bit afraid, that sort of thing would kill it. It would strip it of its quintessential character, its Britishness. But actually, it didn't.
No,
it changed it sort of, but it didn't get rid of the heart and soul of Doctor Who.
No.
And the movie has got the heart and soul of Doctor Who in bucket loads, in spades.
Because having emotion with your characters and.
Sorry, mate, I'm keeping you up now, aren't I?
Yeah, I'm getting a bit tired.
I did tell you I had lots to say on this, and it is actually getting late, listeners, and the rest of my family have gone to bed.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go in a minute, I think. But I'll just say quickly, but having emotion and relations, character relations, relationships in the show is. It's a very modern thing. It's much more present in recent television, by which I mean the last kind of 20 odd years, than in classic Who. And by bringing those elements into the TV movie, it's helped humanise things a lot more and add more depth to the characters. And then perhaps if that hadn't happened, and the Schmaltz angle and stuff, when it came back, wouldn't have had those kind of soap opera-y type elements, and the things that responded so well. People responded so well to.
Yeah. Well, again, you look at this in a historical perspective. So the last series of the classic series with Sylvester and Sophie was starting to tread into that sort of territory, because Ace was a much more fully developed character than any companion really had been,
definitely,
and performed that way and written that way, and she had a journey to go through from start to finish, and it continued beyond the show. And the stories were getting a bit more complex. They were in some ways starting to be more mature. You look at the Curse of Fenric, there's a whole story about sort of adolescence and sort of loss of innocence, and all kinds of stuff there, and sort of demons and vampires are all sort of tied into that sort of stuff. You get Ghostlight, which is an incredibly complex story on many, many different levels, and thematically its exploration of Ace and her relationship with the Doctor, and yet the tragedy of that thing is that nobody outside of the fandom really was watching and had realised that Doctor Who was getting to those sort of levels. Survival. We get the Doctor and Ace in a council tower block, which we'd never had before in the real world. Dealing with people in a suburban and town setting, which we'd never had that. And of course, that's where where Rose sort of picks up in that same urban environment. In a from a very similar perspective, and in between that we get the TV movie with its American flourishes, with its bright lights, with its big budgets, with its big set and everything else. And you kind of think, if you take what was happening with season 26, the last Sylvester McCoy season, blend it with the best bits of the TV movie, you spit it out at the back. And plus, when you think about all the stuff Russell T Davies was saying at the time, we want it to be like Buffy and Smallville, because again, the Doctor Who TV movie happened right at the start of that wave of TV show and that level of complexity that was being introduced in those longer fantasy series. But it's there in the Doctor Who movie scripts as well. It's all there in that story, and I'm glad in some ways that actually it didn't go to the series. I was gutted at the time, but I'm glad that we got the series we did get in 2005. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I'm not sure we would have got the new series had the Doctor Who TV movie not happened, and I think we owe it that. It's a joyous island of fun, nonsense, but a huge amount of heart and soul, and quintessential Doctor Who right in the middle of the wilderness.
Yes, if you haven't watched it, and
do it.
I'm sure that some people haven't. Yeah, do it. Do
yourself a favour,
and go and discover the Eighth Doctor,
and tell us what you think,
and take it further with him. Yeah. So it's been really good going back and watching this again, and I kind of feel definitely. Like I want to go and listen to some Eighth Doctor audios now.
Do that, Geoff. Do that right now, my friend.
Yes, I will.
I'm keeping my voice down because literally everyone else in the house has gone to sleep now.
Yeah, we should sign off for now.
Sign off.
So, thank you, listeners. Everyone. Yeah, see you soon.
See you next time. Bye for now. Cue music. Have we got music? Yeah, we'll have to play the music quietly. No, we won't. It's loud.